What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're listening to this podcast. My name is Dr. Andrew Fix. I'm the host here on The Code, and really appreciate your time tuning in to listen to this episode. What I want to talk to you guys about is a conversation around the topic of procrastination. I've got a little story that I want to start out with. Kind of where did this conversation, or where did this idea to have this conversation come from? Our son Aiden and I were at the park a few days ago. We're playing outside. He's really into mulch right now. He's picking it up. He's letting it slide through his fingers. He's putting it in things, on things, all over. He's loving the rocks. And then he looked over and he started to look at, the playground, the play set that had, slides and some stairs and some other stuff that he could climb on. And I said, Aiden, do you want to go down the slide? And he kind of looks at me like, oh man, I'm not sure. He looks at the slide. We walk up the stairs. He's like right to the edge of it. And you could tell he's like, he kind of wants to, but he's a little bit afraid to do it. He thinks it'll be cool, but he's not quite sure how it's going to turn out. And there's a little bit of fear there associated with, I don't know if I should go down this slide because I don't exactly know what the outcome is going to be. So with some encouragement from me and a little bit of a countdown, 3, 2, 1, go, we decided to go down the slide. And what's cool is this particular park has like a tandem slide. It's one right next to the other. I can kind of go down the slide with him, but on my own slide instead of having him on my lap, and let him have a little bit more independence that way. So anyways, we count down 3, 2, 1, go. We go down the slide. And as you can imagine, just like any toddler would be, he's just filled with joy, right? He's got this big smile on his face. He is super excited and he wants to do it again. And then he wants to do it again. So we ended up going down the slide several times there before we ended up leaving that park. And my point is, there is going to be fear that many of us have, most of us have, associated with doing something new, associated with doing something that we've been putting off, but we're never going to reap the benefits of what could happen. What could my life be like? What could my mood be like in his case? Like, what would happen if I just do it, if I just start? So using the context of, starting a fitness journey, or starting some new health kick, or starting something from a business standpoint, or a relationship with somebody. If you're like, there's something that you want to do, but you're just procrastinating it and you're just avoiding it, many times the reason that you're avoiding it is because there's some fear associated with, what if it doesn't work out? And, I can totally understand that what people want at the end of the day is we want clarity. We want to understand. We want to know what's going to happen. We want to know all of the potential scenarios that are going to present themselves. We want to have an answer for things that are going to pop up. But at the end of the day, most of the decisions that we're making on a daily or weekly or monthly basis are just not that important that we have to have all the clarity. What the Harvard Business School tells us is that people who start early are going to outperform people who procrastinate and people who wait by 40%. So what that means is you could have two people. One could be, less talented. The other one could be more talented in whatever the domain is. And the person, even if they're less talented, the person that starts sooner and gets going and do what we call learning by doing, the person that starts first is going to outperform the other individual, even if they're more talented, by 40%. So if we know that information, because it's been studied, why wouldn't we just start sooner, right? Well, there's fear associated with that. There's emotions associated with that. The fear of judgment of, other people. What if I start this thing and I don't succeed and then I end up quitting it? What are people going to think of me? And what I can tell you is I think we probably build that up in our own heads much more than what other people would. And I tell you guys what I did this exact thing with this podcast. And if you're sitting here listening to this now, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time being a listener to this show, because we procrastinated this for so long before we actually started it. This was something that I wanted to do for years, but I didn't know how to do all the things, right? How do I edit the videos? How do I get it posted. What kind of microphone should we use? What kind of camera? And like all these things that logistically, like how are we going to make it happen? Instead of just getting going, starting, and then figuring things out along the way, which now don't get me wrong. There are situations, say somebody is an engineer and they're building a building or they're building a house or something. Yeah, you need to have all of the appropriate information figured out and the plans laid out before you lay that first brick, because that's like a really important project, right? You don't want the building or the house crumbling down. There's a lot of people's safety at play here. But most of the decisions that we're making are not that. The decision to start this podcast is not as serious as the decision to lay the first brick or lay the foundation to building a skyscraper, right? At the end of the day, it's just not the same thing. We're comparing apples and oranges. So what I'm getting at is we are going to learn by doing much more than by preparing and planning, right? You're going to receive and find much more clarity by doing something than by planning ever will, right? You do not need to have all of the information before taking that first step, laying that first brick. And back to the story about Aiden and I at the park, the joy on his face after he finally went down the slide, even though he was a little bit hesitant to do it, and I may have kind of encouraged him a little bit, he just wanted to keep doing it again and again. And that's the same type of feeling that we can have when we have been putting something off and we finally decide to do it. And then it turns out exactly how we were hoping. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to wish that we had started this sooner, because we're going to be so happy for where we're at now. So I think, my key here to this conversation is I want you to think about what is the thing, or one or two things that you've been putting off, that you really want to do, but maybe you're holding back because you're afraid of what somebody might think. You're afraid of what you might think of yourself if it doesn't work out. And I want you to sort of challenge yourself on, like, is it that big of a deal if it doesn't work out? Because what if it does work out? And don't you think, rather than trying to prepare and plan for every scenario, if you actually just get started on the thing that you're putting off, you're going to run into some mistakes and some failures along the way, but you're hopefully going to fail forward and pick yourself back up off the canvas. And you're going to learn more from that experience than by continuing to try to plan and not actually putting any action forward. Action is going to teach us more than planning ever can. Action is going to provide us with more clarity than planning and preparation ever can. And, if you don't actually put some of these plans in action, if you don't listen to this podcast and then actually go do something, if you don't read that self-development book, but then actually go put some of the information into action from that book, what good is that? It's just taking your time. It might make you feel more knowledgeable, but if that knowledge doesn't get followed up by action, it's not benefiting you or anyone else anymore because you have that information, right? So having it is not the same as using it, obviously. And we all know that's true from the fitness world. How many people have treadmills that become coat racks and have stationary bikes that haven't been used in months or years? If you're going to use the information, you're going to be so much farther ahead. Now, before we wrap up, one quick note on procrastination is it's not necessarily a bad thing. And many of us procrastinate, and there's good reason for that. And I guess the reason, or I guess I should say the powerful thing about procrastination, or part of the reason that many of us do it, is because of the power of a deadline, right? Many of us procrastinate studying for that exam, doing that project, finishing that presentation until it's actually due because there's a deadline. So what the Harvard Business Review and Harvard Business School also tells us as a couple methods to start to overcome your tendency to procrastinate all the time is two things. One, we need to start with some small behavior change, which means instead of thinking about like doing the thing that gets you to the outcome, what are the tiny small tasks or tiny small habits that you can start to implement that can start to become a habit for you, something that you're going to do over and over and over again. And those little habits can start to stack on top of one another and lead to the outcome. So instead of focusing on, the end goal, what are the tiny little building blocks along the way, brick after brick after brick, and start with the first one, right? What's that tiny habit that if you continue to do it repetitively, it's going to benefit you and lead down the path to get to that outcome or whatever the goal is that you have, right? So think about the building blocks, not the end goal, and do those things, and you'll get there much faster. And then number 2 is set a deadline, right? We procrastinate up until the deadline, and then we get something done. And all of us have done that. If you can artificially, so to speak, inject that deadline sooner, like if you can put deadlines on things for yourself, you're more likely to do them. If you have this big plan or this idea, but you never put a deadline in place of like, when am I going to do that thing by? The likelihood of you doing it goes down significantly. But if there's a deadline, then you're way more likely to do it. So no matter how small the goal is for yourself, like it could be, we're doing this fun Halloween themed pumpkin painting contest at Physio room. And we had a deadline. Hey, you need to have your pumpkins to the clinic painted, ready for our clients to judge them by this date, right? If there's a deadline, people are more likely to get things done. And you're the same way. If you set a deadline for yourself, you're more likely to do the thing that you want to do. And then lastly, I guess I said there was 2 things, but one other piece that could be really beneficial is find some accountability, right? That could be you, yourself, setting some accountability, like setting a reminder on your phone, like reminding yourself to do something. It could be another friend or family member or a spouse that's holding you accountable, checking in with you on your progress towards the thing that you told them you wanted to do. So if it's important to you, start with the tiny habits that'll help get you there. Set a deadline and stick to it, and then find somebody or something that can help hold you accountable to the thing and make it just way more likely that you're going to do it. So again, you guys, this podcast, The Code, is so fun. We procrastinated it for a long time before it finally got started. And what I want you guys to do is go out there and get started on the thing so that you can wind up in a better place, a farther along place than if you just continue to try and prep and prepare and make sure everything is perfect before you get started. It doesn't need to be perfect. You're going to learn from your failures, and you're going to wind up way farther ahead by just getting started and taking that first step than if you continue to wait. So again, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in, joining this conversation, joining this episode. If you think this would be beneficial for somebody else that you know, it would be amazing if you could share this podcast with them, leave a review, drop a comment on there. And then my contact information is all in the show notes. If there's a topic or an episode that you have an idea for, please send me a message, let me know. But these things really help us get this show out to more and more people, and we couldn't do it without you. So I really appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Code. See ya.